Hello and welcome, Cynthia Miller here. We are doing the Cornucopia of Abundance, and it is reminiscent to me of a small town rural fall fair. This was conceived to be in a display in a barn at a fall fair. And I'm jumping right in with this beautiful sunflower. I think I put four maybe shades of yellow in this, and so I'll post the colors as I go. But basically, you can see that the sunflower is sort of propped up. The bottom petals are a little bit shorter. It looks like they're a little bit scrunched, and that's the look that you want. The spiral of seeds in the center of sunflowers are a beautiful harmonic formation and something they call sacred geometry. And so try to make that a little bit evident as well with just little taps with your brush. So I'm putting a nice layer of yellows on this, and what I'm going to do is then go inside into the center and tap with my brush with the browns. I'm going to work on different parts of this that are not adjacent to each other because you want to let them dry in between. So you can just start wherever you like. I'm starting at the left-hand side and working my way over, and then hopefully things will dry as I go. Now these little plants look like little pumpkins. They grow late summer and into the fall. And I'm going to start right in with a pumpkin. I've got a no-name orange. I'm using yellows and mixing reds. So really just play with these fall colors on your palette. I try to stick to the same throughout. The apples in the center are quite red. They really pop. And this is really what you have to do is go through and see how you can make each one of these stand out, because they sort of get lost in each other, and so that it seems to be the challenge. And that is also why I put the background in, to make it look like there's a wall behind. So we'll get to that. Right now I'm just letting the paint sort of fall down into the bits of the lower parts of the pumpkin that fall into the apples. And so you sort of have to go back and forth. What is in front of something else? What is behind? Sometimes I leave white lines in between items so that it's separate. But I think overlapping of your especially in still life, you want to have that overlap look realistic, right? I'm just putting in these red fruits, and I can't remember the name of these fruits, but they sort of have a little bit of a tuft on one end, and they always look interesting in still life. And then these are one set of plums. I love the really deep, rich purple that I used. I think probably 3 to 4 coats of give them a nice, sort of layers of shadow and highlights. When you're doing fruits, always leave a white spot in the same spot as the one next to it, so it looks like the light is shining from the same source. And you just keep putting shading on those plums and berries on the lower half, and leave that highlight in the upper half showing. And so I put the plums in. There's all kinds of little pieces to this that I end up going back and forth. And of course, this is a time to be thankful, give thanks. The energy of feeling grateful is really an abundant energy. So I love that this sort of represents harvest time and the abundance of harvest. I think I'm doing the apples here now. I started putting in a lighter shade of yellow green in the apples, and then I covered it with red because I wanted it to sort of have that look of yellow and green underneath the red. You can't just put red on an apple. That's what I was thinking anyways, but maybe that's a rule I need to break. So this did take a while to do. There are lots of bits and pieces, but using a small brush, just as I said, working from one side to the other. And you notice I didn't tape this down, so it's a little bit easier to move around. And I've started into the white pumpkin here, and what I did was put a little bit of water on each of the seams, and I left a little bit of white paper in between the water lines. And what I'm going to do now is just dab on this tiny little bit of gray. I usually use the Payne's gray. No, I think this was sepia actually. And then I just dabbed it into those lines and moved that water around a little bit. And it just, I love the way it dried. It looks like it's sort of a pleasantly plump pumpkin that has a lot of age to it. That's how I did the white one. Yeah. So the apples have dried, and I am now putting on a layer of this beautiful red color. It's nice and deep, rich, and I'm doing one apple at a time. And I think the challenge here is to just make each piece a masterpiece and make it stand out amongst its neighbors. There are a lot of pieces to this artwork. So, and then I finished it off with a little bit of highlight there. No extra paint, just taking it off a little bit. I'm using a beautiful sort of turquoisey, greeny blue color. I wanted the foliage to look a little bit different than just green for these. And I paint the stems. I pay attention to whether the leaf is overlapping the stem, so I can go either behind the leaf or in front of the leaf. And then I just fill in the leaves with not covering all of the leaf, but giving it some color with this lovely blue-green, and then we'll let that dry, and we'll just, like I said, pay attention to what overlaps everything. So we're basically putting on a base coat for each of the components of this piece. Just letting each piece dry at one little bit at a time. The next piece is the ears of corn, and I've chosen a really beautiful mix of turquoisey, green, yellow, and I wanted the corn to look like it was, and we're talking about the leaves of the corn, these big leaves come down and actually cover the corn while it grows. But when you prepare it to eat, of course, you pull them back, and they're quite big. They're still attached here, and I wanted to make a big spectacle of them because I think they're so beautiful. You can make the colors light and airy, layer upon layer, and also bring a little bit of that green down around the edges of the actual cob of corn, and then we'll get into the yellow once that dries. Now I decided to fill the basket with these tiny little cherry bombs, and I'm doing 3 at a time, and I'll just keep going back and filling in some more. I'm testing out some green here, and I want a nice sort of limey green for green grapes. And these are probably the most difficult thing to paint, to make them look like grapes. But basically I just worked at it a few different layers, and finally I think they do look like grapes, and it's sort of the shape they take. A few are loose, and just putting on different shades of that green. I'm just painting the stems of the apples now. I use my lovely little browns for that. The stems or the stem of the pumpkin. The way that I do the pumpkin stems, and maybe you were in our class, I put a lighter color at the bottom, and the stem to me is more dry, and the lighter color is more live attached to the pumpkin. And then just sort of make lines that go up the stem to make it look like there is plant veins in the stem. And then I also outline the outside circle with a little bit of a darker color. So I'm just filling in the ends of these fruits. I don't know what they're called, and I can't seem to find them online now, and I'm wondering if I made it up seeing these, but they're red. They have a strip of sort of hairy texture on them, and I don't even know if they're fruit or vegetable, if they're edible, but I just thought they looked interesting in different sort of still lifes I've seen. So I think I'll make these pomegranate. Those big red ones. Those are the apples I'm working on, and then the smaller ones are the pomegranates. So how's that? Instead of having an imaginary fruit in there, we'll have pomegranates. You could add strawberries. You could add more grapes. You could add all kinds of things. I really loved doing this one because there's just so many things that you could include here. The designs are endless. I'm adding a little bit of the orange to the pumpkin, giving that a little bit more rich color. And this is, again, what I'm doing is just going over the little bits, let them dry, go over them again. Here I'm going over the grapes with another shot of green. You don't really want any white showing in between, so over time you fill in those little bits of white with a darker green. I'm doing the same with the I'm just starting the corn here. So what I'm doing is I've got this beautiful yellow, I believe I used yellow ochre to start, and I just did little bits with my brush, the end of the brush, to make it look like the lines of corn. Of course, you want to have a little bit of curvature to that to make it look like the cob shape. I'm going to work on the Cornucopia, and you want to pay attention to how the lines are that trace it around to give it the round shape. We've got it the round circle opening going out to a point, and those lines that I'm drawing in there right now sort of curve around to the lower part of it. Now at some point doing this, I thought that maybe it looked like it was tipped up a little bit too much, but once I get the background in there, put a little bit of shadow behind it, I like the way that it looks like it's tipping out the goods and sort of adding to that flow of vegetables coming out. Obviously they weren't all in there, but it's the representation of just keeps coming. It takes a few layers of these beautiful yellows and browns to paint out the corn, the two cobs of corn, and more yellow than brown. Obviously, you want these to stand out as yellow. You don't want them just straight along the edges, so put a little bit of sort of dabs around it. Make it look like it's got the texture of the kernels. Now I did put some white water on this squash right at the front. Everything else around it is dry, so I'm just staying within the confines of the shape of the squash. I put this beautiful orange on the lower level and a little bit of green at the top, so it really does blend well together when it dries. And I'm just going over the leaves, just bringing out the accents of all these little pieces now. And as I mentioned in the class where we painted just the pumpkins, we really paid attention to the stem, the leaves, the where it meets the pumpkin, and really bringing out the textures and the different layers of that. So these little pumpkin-shaped plants are fun this time of year, and they're sort of light and see-through, so you want to have that effect when you're adding your color to these beauties. And again, just going through the details, making it look like there's a little cap on each one, having that cap sort of overlap and giving them a little bit of highlight on the top just by taking off a little bit of paint. Very easy to put that highlight on there. And then just fixing up the green a little bit more of these little pumpkin plants. And I think the height of this this plant, along with the corn ears, really gives it a bit of mass. It's not just these vegetables sitting on a table. We're actually going to make it look like they are a display in a barn with the background that we're going to do. Now, your template didn't include the leaves, so I'm just drawing out a couple of leaves on either side of the composition. I wanted it to have a little bit of a separate look of display, and you know, different colored leaves are definitely what you're going to see in the fall. So I put a pair on the left-hand side, and I put a pair on the right-hand side. And I'm just going in here with some more little, I don't know if they're cherries or some sort of berries, but I'm doing little bunches of 3. And I'm just filling up the opening of the basket. And I am using the green to give it a little bit of foliage in there. So just 2 leaves, 3 berries is just filling up that opening. And then of course you have to let it dry and go back over it again. And now I'm putting some water on the leaves that I've just drawn. I'm putting some beautiful yellow color down the center of the leaf. I'm washing my brush. I'm dipping into some beautiful red colors and mixing that with the yellow that I put down the middle of the leaf. And then I'm washing my brush, and then I'm dipping into a sort of a sap green and outlining the leaf with the green. Now you don't want the green to blend too much with the red. It will cause a little bit of a muddy look to it. But it's okay that the red and the yellow blend together in the center of the leaf. I love the way these dry. I love the way they blend. It's just a matter of putting the right amount of water in there so that it's not too wet, and enough to just sort of keep that yellow and red in the center of the leaf. So I'm working a little bit around the edge of the basket. I'm going to call it a basket. It's easier to say than cornucopia. And you'll see there's a sort of a space between the corn and the basket. And what I end up doing is filling that up with some berries. I've kept the berries kind of the same to the opening of the basket, and I just fill that up with the berries. If you look at it close up, you'll see what I mean. Now I've done the leaves on the right hand side the same way that I did them on the left, and I'm just going around putting another layer of green on the outside of the leaf and having that the main color, but having the yellow and red shine through. And I like the way they turned out. So just looking at some colors now, and what I'm going to do is start putting in the base of the display. I'm thinking hay, sort of browny yellow colors, and just using very small quick strokes all around. It does really help to ground this picture. I don't think that it's appropriate to just leave it white in the background. You need to have it on some sort of a table, and that's still life for you, really, is to be able to put an acorn or pumpkin on a table or a place marker. And so I probably go over this 3 or 4 times. I take a smaller brush as well as this one to go in between all the places, and you'll see close up again the amount of background color that's in this. So this is just layer upon layer, And I feel that every time I did a layer, I did something different with my brush. So either up and down, back and forth. And I think it's really important to get in between the fruits that you have in the front, or the vegetables that you have sitting in the front, and the leaves as well. I'm going in between the leaves of the flower, and like I said, try to eliminate the bits of white unless it's a highlight, because there's no light really shining in there. If they're touching and there's hay, then it's probably darker along the lower level, right? So after it all dries, then I go through and put a bit of a shadow on it as well. Now this is called a vignette. We're creating the background, but only on the subject matter. There's no background that goes into the distance, and we'll go into that a little bit later. Now, the last few minutes really are about bringing each part of this picture more detail. I've added a little bit of this transparent yellow to the ends of the sunflowers. I'm going over the details of each piece of it to make sure that they each stand out. And I'm just going through the in between the petals of the flowers with the background color. I want it to look like there is background, like it is sitting on something. So the color of the hay, the base of this is going to be painted in between all the little pieces. We're outlining the leaves again in a little bit of green. They seem to just sort of fade into the background, so I'm bringing those out a little bit. Every piece needs its own sort of highlight to make this piece work. There's a lot going on, and I keep repeating this, but it is really important that each piece has its own sort of standing out part of it. So just go over each piece, as I mentioned, 3 to 4 layers on each part of it. It's going to make this work. I'm just adding a few more berries or cherries or whatever these are that are hanging inside the basket. I want it to look full. I want it to look like it's overflowing. So a little bit of this sort of cherry red color, and I'm putting in leaves as well. And so just want to reiterate that this place where the corn sort of comes up to the basket, I'm filling that up with the berries, and again I'll show you the close-up just so you understand it. I think that it really helps to pull it all together. And so there's the close-up of what I'm talking about at the entrance to the basket. You've got lots of berries right in the opening of it. So the last piece of this, I've got the background done. I'm going to show you how I did it. It's very simple. I simply used a fairly large brush and placed up and down strokes of water, and then I applied a very light shade of the same color as the hay. So the background does not go out to the edge of the paper. I'm using a smaller brush here and just doing up and down strokes. I want those lines to look like a barn in the background. So I hope you've enjoyed painting the Cornucopia, and I do wish that it brings you overflowing abundance into your life. Enjoy!